Today on our space, nothing says, "This is totally fine," like having to hide your face, your bank account, and your explanations, all at the same time. Cheating wife lied to me about expensive gifts from her affair partner. I divorced her, forced her to sell the gifts, and exposed her to her family. I've, 30 male, always been satisfied with my relationship, and I thought my wife, Stella, 30 female, was too. We've built a nice life together and have been working towards some important goals together. We've been getting ready to grow our family, and we've already started saving in a joint account to buy a house. I always felt fortunate that home ownership was in the foreseeable future for us, with so many people our age had already given up on the possibility. I truly felt like the two of us were blessed, and I was grateful for the life we were building. I didn't know Stella wasn't satisfied with it, though. She never told me that herself, though. In fact, she never gave me any signs that she was unsatisfied. She always seemed just as excited about achieving our goals as I was. I didn't notice any cracks in the relationship. She hid everything well. She didn't show any signs of resentment. She didn't draw away or start giving me the silent treatment. I never noticed even the slightest change in her personality. If anything, she even seemed happier. At the time, I thought it was because things were going so well for us. Now I know it was just because things were going well for her. The first signs were purchases that she hadn't told me about. Now, I'm not saying she had to ask for permission anytime we wanted to spend money, but at the time, we had both agreed to be disciplined with our finances. We had an understanding that we would run it by each other anytime we wanted to make a substantial purchase. So when I noticed new bags and shoes, I was curious. I asked her about them one evening, and she just waved them off, saying they weren't as expensive as they looked. She claimed they were cheap knockoffs that she and a friend had bought online. That sounded a little off to me. I knew she didn't like fakes, and they seemed a bit too well made to be knockoffs. I didn't doubt her, though. There was no real reason for me to suspect her of anything. Besides, she was keeping up with her end of things when it came to saving to the joint account, so I couldn't complain. I didn't press her any further after that. Looking back, that was my first mistake. Even if I didn't suspect infidelity, I should have done a bit more digging. I had a gut feeling that something was off, but I just ignored it because life felt good at the moment. It took a while before I couldn't ignore the purchases anymore. They kept coming, and she kept trying to downplay them as not being as expensive as they looked. She claimed she got a really good deal, or that they were knockoffs again. I stopped buying that explanation pretty quickly. It was impossible for me to ignore the fact that these things cost more money than she should have had at the moment. I even checked our cards and the joint account to make sure she wasn't getting the money from there. She wasn't. That's when I knew something was really wrong. If she wasn't spending our money, then where was she getting all of these things from? I tried my hardest to come up with some kind of reasonable explanation. Maybe she'd found a new source of income, some sort of online side hustle that she just hadn't told me about, but that didn't make any sense. Stella wouldn't hide something like that from me, especially when we had some shared goals set out. Everything we did financially was supposed to move us closer to buying that house. Maybe she was getting the things from a friend, like a girlfriend who didn't need these bags and shoes anymore, and handed them off to her. I knew women shared stuff like that all the time, but it didn't make sense. Why would she come up with that cover story about where these things came from then? I was sure she would be open about it if these things were gifts from a friend, so I immediately discounted it as one of the possibilities. Once I'd gone through every option, I finally landed on the only one that really made any sense. Someone was buying all this stuff for her. As soon as that thought crossed my mind, everything else fell into place. It explained the secrecy and the weak excuses. It explained how she was getting these expensive items without leaving a single hint of spending money on them. And of course, there was a logical conclusion. There was really only one reason why a man would spend that kind of money on a married woman. I didn't want to lean into that possibility because I knew what it would mean. I tried to fight that conclusion. Nobody wants to think that about their wife, especially when things are going better than they've ever been. But the logic was just too solid. I didn't confront her about it. She would just lie to me, and I didn't want to put her on the defensive. I wanted to be able to find out the real truth and not whatever lies she would use to cover her butt. So I went looking for more details. I could have waited and watched for signs and hoped that she slipped up, but I wanted results fast. The easiest way to do that was go into her phone and look for her conversations with the mystery gift giver. If it was one of her friends, then no harm was done, besides me needing to figure out why she had chosen to lie about the entire thing. But if I was right about all this, then my life was going to change. It took 3 days before I could finally get my chance. I'd been waiting around for an opportunity to get my hands on her phone without her noticing. That was when I realized just how attached to it she had become recently. It was in her hands most of the time. If she wasn't giggling with her nose in the screen, then she was holding it lightly by her side. Once I got my opportunity, I jumped on it. I unlocked her phone and sped through her messages. I didn't see anything about any gifts in her conversations with her friends, and I felt my heart sink. I had already felt like a confirmation that I was right about her affair. The actual confirmation came a minute after that, when I started looking into her messages with other contacts too. It didn't matter if I knew them or not, I just started going through everything, not just her friends. She was talking to a man named Gary, who looked like he was at least 10 years older than both of us. They'd been speaking for a while, but it didn't seem like they'd ever actually met with each other. That didn't make it any better, though. My suspicion was right. Gary was the one who had been sending Stella those gifts. She even sent him links to the things that she wanted him to get for her. I was surprised to see just how expensive they were. These were bags and shoes that cost several $100s each. I felt like a fool for buying into her knockoff story. The worst part was the reason why Gary had been sending her these gifts. It turned out that he lived in another state, so they never actually met with each other, but they'd been sexting. Gary would ask her for pictures and videos of herself, and she would reply with an item she wanted in exchange. Once Gary bought them, she'd give him what he asked for. I stared at the phone in disbelief. It still seems unreal to me. We're not broke. We're actually doing pretty well for ourselves. Like I said, we're saving up for a house at the moment. There was nothing reasonable that would drive her to do this kind of thing. Did she really want luxury items that bad? Or was there some part of her that enjoyed this? I had to settle on it being a mix of the two. The truth is that it didn't matter though. Whether she enjoyed it or whether it was strictly business, it all came down to the same thing. I couldn't stay married to her anymore. I don't know how other people feel about it, but to me, this wasn't any different than if she had been sleeping with Gary. It was cheating, 100%. I didn't do anything about it that night. I just took photos of all her messages. I made sure to get the links to the items Gary had bought for her. And over the next few days, I went around the house, secretly taking pictures of the physical items themselves. I wanted hard proof that she'd been receiving expensive gifts from another man. I wanted to have everything documented, and I wanted it all to make perfect sense when it came to the point where I'd confront her or use the info in court. After that, I spoke to a lawyer. I explained the situation, and he told me that regardless of how strange it sounded, it was still infidelity and marital misconduct. There are still a few more steps to carry out before I'm ready to confront her. I want the divorce papers drawn up first, and I still have to work on separating our finances and freezing the joint account. I'll drop an update if anything interesting happens after that. Update. I promised an update if something interesting happened. Well, I'm back now. A lot has happened, and I'm glad I took the time to slow down and do things properly. If I'd reacted emotionally and jumped to confront her, things might have turned out not so well for me. My lawyer walked me through the process of separating our finances. I opened a new account in my name and redirected my salary there. Then I froze the joint account so nothing could disappear once she realized what was going on. I didn't drag things out once the paperwork was ready. I sat her down one evening and asked her about Gary. The look on her face made everything worth it. It was like she saw a ghost. She tried too late to pretend she had no idea what I was talking about, but it wasn't convincing. Not after her initial reaction gave everything away. I told her how stupid I found it that she was trying to play dumb at that point, especially because she knew there was no way that I was bluffing. I didn't let her suffer for too long. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots. She sank into her seat and put her head into her hands. I stayed quiet while I waited for her to talk. I wasn't going to make it easy for her. After a few seconds, I realized she was crying quietly. A few weeks ago, that sight would have sent me running over to the side to comfort her. Now, I felt nothing. I have to say that I even felt some satisfaction. I just waited for her to pull herself together. When she looked up, her eyes were red. She said she knew it looked bad, but it didn't mean anything. She never actually met up with him. It was just something she'd done to get a bit of extra cash on the side. She claimed she was doing it for us, so we could save up for the house faster. I cut her off and asked how a bunch of shoes and bags got us any closer to our goal. I told her not to try to use that as an excuse. We aren't having any trouble coming up with the money on our own. Sure, it would be nicer to get there a bit faster, but that wasn't worth her selling herself on the internet. She didn't like it when I put it that way. She argued that the pictures couldn't even be identified as hers because her face wasn't in any of them. I hadn't actually noticed that, but it didn't make it any better. I was familiar with her body, and I was completely certain she was the one in those photos. The fact that she'd hidden her face didn't make the betrayal any less sharp. It just meant she wasn't a complete idiot as an online whore. That didn't make her smart, though. It just showed that she knew what she was doing was wrong, and she took steps to hide it. She could see that she was losing me, and she went into damage control. She said it was just business, and there was no emotion involved. She put her hand on mine, asked me to look into her eyes, and said, "You have to believe me. I wasn't cheating on you." I looked at her in the eyes and felt nothing. All I could see was that she was desperate for me to buy her version of events. I stood up and told her I didn't care if she loved him or not. I didn't even care whether she'd slept with him. She was selling her intimacy to another man for money and gifts. There was no way I would stay with her after that. That's when I told her that I'd already filed for divorce. She stood up, came to me, and started begging. She promised to block him, sell the items, and go to therapy. She said she would do anything to fix this. I told her I wasn't interested in fixing it. I just wanted to move on. So I moved out of the house the next day. The divorce process wasn't easy, but it wasn't exactly how my lawyer said it would. The documentation made a big difference. The gifts were treated as an afterthought by the court. They were marital property and their value was factored into the settlement. But there was another thing that came to light too. My lawyer was the one who had recommended we get an accountant to look into our finances. He was convinced that she had gotten another bank account where she was hiding cash gifts she had received from Gary. I found that hard to believe. I was certain that I would have come across some trace of that in her messages with him. My lawyer was right. This is why you listen to the professionals. The reason I hadn't seen any signs of cash payments from him was that she didn't have to ask for them. They were recurring monthly into a secret bank account that I knew nothing about. It wasn't a huge amount, just a couple $100s a month, but it still shocked me. Gary actually had her on a 304 salary. I had to sit down and think about the kind of woman I'd been married to. There were only a few $1,000s in the account, but keeping it secret really hurt when it came to the settlement. The money in the secret account was added to the marital pool, and everything was split down the middle. All the gifts from Gary suffered the same fate. Half of everything was mine. To be honest, I didn't really want them, but I wasn't going to turn them down either. Those shoes and bags were worth our entire marriage to her. Taking them from her felt like poetic justice. She wanted to keep some of the bags and give me the rest. I insisted that we sell everything and split the monetary value. We fought over that for a while. Call me petty if you want. I won't deny it. I just didn't want her walking out of the divorce with the lifestyle she'd been ready to sell her body for. Eventually, things went my way and everything was sold. The amount was added to the money in our joint account, and we each walked away with our half. I didn't care what she did with hers. If she wanted to go back and buy new bags and heels, she was free to. I was just glad she didn't get to keep the ones Gary had bought for her. He'd still be there for her if she was in the mood to keep going with their arrangement. The hidden account and the infidelity came back to bite her in the butt. She didn't get any long-term spousal support, which felt like a small miracle to me. That was as close to a win as a man could get in a divorce. When the divorce was finalized, it felt like a weight had been lifted off of my shoulders. It was a draining affair, but the sense of freedom at the end of it was worth it. All I can say is that I'm glad I can finally move on with my life. I wasn't happy to get divorced, though. I still have some moments when I got sad thinking about what I lost, a wife I thought I loved, and the future we were building together. But I have to remind myself that it was all a lie. She wasn't the woman I thought I knew, and she definitely isn't the type of person I want raising my children. When I look at it that way, I realize that I dodged a huge bullet. Stella was having a harder time moving on. She called a few times to tell me that she still loved me, and she wished I had given us another chance. To this day, she still insists that she never intended to cheat on me, and she wouldn't have done it if she thought it counted as cheating. I don't know if she really believes that she didn't cheat, or if it's just something she's deluded herself into thinking so she won't have to face her guilt. Just to dig the knife in, I chose to let her entire family know what she had done, because they knew she was divorced, but they didn't know why. All it took was the same evidence I had used in the divorce. Screenshots of her messages with Gary and pictures of the gifts. There was a lot of furor to the response of my messages, but I didn't bother responding. I had given them the truth, and I didn't need to debate it with her family members. I left them to fight it out. She heard what I had done and tried to reach out to me, very likely to scream and yell. I don't answer her calls or respond to her text messages. What could I even say to her? I just let her go to voicemail and leave her unread. She's starting to get the message that I don't want anything to do with her. I'm focusing on rebuilding my life now. I've moved into a new apartment, and I'm still saving for a house. I won't let her mistakes set me back on my goal. It's slower now, but there's a sense of comfort in knowing that your plans can't be sabotaged by someone else's actions at any moment. I don't even think about Stella anymore. I'm slowly getting used to my new life without her. I thought I would miss the happy years we had together, but those memories have been poisoned by the way our marriage ended. When I think of her, I don't see the woman I thought I would be building a life with. I see the one who wanted designer bags so badly that she sold her dignity. It didn't count? Come on. She knew enough to hide her face, keep a separate account, and lie about where things were coming from. People don't take that many precautions for something they think is harmless. Also, for what it's worth, I don't think this was ever about money or helping you guys get ahead. If that were true, you would have known about it. That was something she wanted to do, and she just decided you didn't need to be part of that decision. And yeah, it sucks. You lost what you thought you had, but you didn't lose something real. You found out it wasn't real in the way you want to believe it was. You didn't ruin your life. You caught it before she got locked in. If your partner was secretly selling intimate photos or videos to someone else for money or gifts, but insists there's no feelings or no physical contact, would you consider that cheating or just a transaction?